Hey guys, welcome to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. It is your favorite two, Ari over there, Korea over here. Ari, first off, how's your Wednesday? It is March 30th, 2022. We're already almost in April. How you doing?
I'd be doing a lot better if my computer didn't just crash on me, but, we move on. Other than that, I'm doing good.
Yeah, that's just the craziness of March. Anything can happen. It's still March. Yeah, that's good. We're just going to get right into it. So pretty much breaking news right pretty much before we got on. Bruce Arians has moved from the coaching position at Tampa Bay. He was the head coach of that Super Bowl winning team back in 2020, the 2020-2021 season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has officially stepped down as the head coach and has retired, but is now moving into the front office position. And Coach Todd Bowles, he is now being elevated from the defensive coordinator position to head coaching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this coming season. This was kind of a shock to a lot of people, but at the same time, obviously Bruce Arians, he's getting up in there in age, and it's not really a big thing, and he's dealt with a lot, and he's seen a lot. Obviously, a lot of people remember him as a coach of Arizona when they were a playoff team with Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer and David Johnson and them. But then he's finally got his ring when he won that Super Bowl against the Chiefs in that home game as a Tampa Bay Buck. Ari, first kind of impressions after seeing this. Was this kind of a shock to you? And what do you think his kind of role within the front office is going to be, considering obviously all the positions are pretty much going to be filled?
Yeah, it's definitely a shocker. I hadn't heard. I don't think anybody saw this really coming outside of maybe in his circle. But I mean, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference to Tampa Bay as long as Tom Brady is under center. I think obviously Arians is a great coach and all, but I think this is Brady's team until he retires. Yeah, you mentioned him getting up in age, so it's kind of weird how he's not like retiring completely. He's still staying in the front office role. Um, but I mean, Todd Bowles, right? He was a head coach before, so obviously he has that experience. And like I said, I think Tom Brady's probably he's not a head coach. That's not his role, but I think he has so much experience that he can be kind of a co-head coach if you want to call it, for lack of better terms. But yeah, definitely quite the shocker that just happened like 10 minutes before we went live. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna affect them as a team too much as long as Tom Brady's there.
Yeah, and also something we kind of forgot to mention. We saw these kind of rumors going throughout like the regular season and heading into the offseason that Bruce Arians and Tom Brady, they were having a little bit of a disconnect in terms of how they wanted to run that offense in Tampa Bay. So maybe that could be a contributor, since obviously Bruce Arians was staying since Tom Brady was retiring, but then Tom Brady's coming back. So now Bruce Arians is retiring, but still wants to be part of the team. And I think that's kind of why maybe he moved to the front office instead of just being completely off the team. Obviously, these are rumors, and I don't believe they're true at all, but there's been so many Tom Brady to Miami rumors circulating the media, sports media as of recent too, which could affect that as well. Maybe that's why he's still in the front office, because Tom Brady could be being shipped to Miami, because obviously he's been linked to Miami after the Tyreek Hill trade and the offensive weapons they have down there. And Miami has tried to pursue Tom Brady in the past when he was still in New England, but I guess things just didn't fall through. So maybe that could happen, but whatever's going on in Tampa Bay, obviously it's something going on, but obviously we know Todd Bowles has had that experience as a head coach. I think he's coached, I think the Jets before, and what was it? I think the Giants as well, or I think another new Northeastern team, I believe. But yeah, I still wonder what Bruce Arians' role is going to be in the front office. A lot of people have been saying on Twitter that Bruce Arians has always kind of wanted to retire and promote someone up to his position. Um, uh, promote someone up to his position after he retires. So that was it. That was in a tweet from Ian Rappaport. So maybe that could be linked to that as well. But yeah, it was definitely kind of a shock to me to see that. But at the same time, that's just the magic of football. Anything could really happen. And now Todd Bowles is a head coach, and I'm kind of intrigued to see how he kind of runs this offense, considering the GOAT Tom Brady's gonna assumingly be head coaching that that team, that offense the whole time, and then obviously Todd Bowles is the defensive specialist, so maybe that'll be that 1-2 combo that actually worked for Tampa Bay this year. So maybe Tom Brady can get his final ring. It'll be interesting to see. But in other NFL news coming out yesterday, there was the playoff overtime change. Obviously now with the Bills Chiefs game, with ended in very very controversial ways, with the overtime rules obviously only getting one possession. If you get obviously the old rules for overtime, where in the playoffs, whoever first possession, if you score a touchdown on the first possession, the game is over. A lot of people were complaining, obviously, with the whole Bills Chiefs game, which was a very back and forth game. The rule has now been changed to where both teams will be getting a possession of the football. I know there's more into it. Ari, can you explain a little bit more about what's into it?
Yeah, I didn't. I have they announced the actual? Like, I know they. I assume it's like if you both score a touchdown or whatever, then it's next score wins from there. Like after each get one possession. That was my assumption, but I didn't see anything online about like specifics yet.
Well, yeah. This just happened as of yesterday. It was kind of something that a lot of coaches and players have been hammering for the NFL to do with all this nonsense. But pretty much both teams are pretty much assured one possession in the new overtime rules. This is according to the article on ESPN here. Obviously, it's not only happening in it's not happening in the regular season. This is only for the postseason right now. So, Ari, does this kind of help? I mean, it's something, right? I mean, we're getting that fairness that both teams get a possession, and obviously it's limited, but it's something. But would you rather see it in the whole NFL season from like start to finish, or would you rather see it in a playoff setting?
Well, my assumption is that they're just kind of testing it out in the playoffs, and if all goes well in the playoffs, then they'll eventually add it in the regular season. That's what kind of I assumed. But I mean, I've kind of always been for this. I understand that there's two sides to the argument, and I understand all sides that defense wins championships, defense needs to get a stop. My personal perspective is that if one defense needs to get a stop, then the other defense should have to get a stop. I think that if both teams score a touchdown, it should be next score wins from there. Because if you can't get a stop 2 points in a row, then I think you deserve to lose at that point. But I think that at least one shot each offense should get. So yeah, and obviously playoffs games are bigger than regular season games, obviously. So I think that's why they're testing it out in the playoffs first, and I assume that they would eventually make it a rule in the regular season as well in the future, assuming that the players and coaches and everyone responds well to it. But yeah, like you mentioned, the Bills Chiefs game this past year, I think it was the Chiefs Patriots game, like Mahomes' first year he started, I believe, is when this came up as an issue. But I think I saw the voting was like 28-4 or something like that in favor of yes. So it was an overwhelming majority voted for this rule change, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see, how this affects the playoff now. Obviously, you mentioned that Chiefs Patriots game back in that 2018-19 AFC Championship game with Mahomes' magical first year under center for the Chiefs. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see now how this affects overtime, especially with how just competitive each conference has been getting, especially with the AFC. Especially, you see how just stacked the AFC is getting, pretty much day by day with all these big trades and acquisitions and everything. So, yeah, I think this playoff change is definitely needed. I think just doing it in the playoffs for now is okay. And I think I agree with you. If it is a hit or a big success, I think expanding it, to the regular season will definitely be key and needed. And I think that'll be a key addition to make, the game of football a little more intriguing. One of my biggest hammerings for this new playoff change overtime rule thing is kind of like how college football does in overtime. I think you just keep going back and forth until the defense should be able to make a stop, because isn't that how you want to play football, right? Like you have to rely on your offense to score and then have your defense prove that they can get a stop. So, and if that's what the game of football is, then why don't we have that in overtime? Obviously, yes, age and wear and tear, but like I don't think games should end in ties in the NFL at all. I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, this is a start. This is a good start, and I like how this is going. So I believe this is in effect in the next coming up season, if I'm correct. So it'll be interesting to see how the 2022-2023 playoffs will shake out. Now we're going to switch into some NBA talk, and here we go again. The Lakers, here we go again. They start losing more and more games. More and more games. They just lost to the Mavericks the other day. This team, man, it just looks like they're just trying to not make the plan. Obviously, right now, they're not even in the plan. The Spurs have now replaced them with the tiebreakers and everything. So, Ari, is it time to rule this team out? I mean, they have a really hard end of the year schedule. They already have lost LeBron. Anthony Davis has a possibility of coming back, and I think he's coming back on Friday. But still, I mean, with all these speculations, just how the team is playing, I don't think this team can really go on a run to really solidify a playoff spot. What do you make of this team? Do you really deserve to be in the play-in spot if they make it? And do you really see any success for this team if they can really gel together in the next coming weeks?
I'll just clarify first, depending on when you guys are watching this, that so Memphis and San Antonio play. I think they're playing right now, I believe. So if San Antonio wins or loses, the Lakers will be a half game in or half game out. But obviously, that's besides the point, overall. And the Lakers play Utah tomorrow on Thursday without LeBron, and Davis is doubtful. So you assume the Lakers are going to lose that game unless Utah blows another 25-point lead like they did yesterday against the Clippers. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a complete mess right now, obviously and LeBron's arguably having the best year of his career, or at least the best year in a long time. So yeah, they're a complete mess right now. There's no defense. They're down by like 30 by halftime against the Mavericks the other day. It's like there's like really no effort. It's like they don't even try. It's definitely a complete train wreck, and I'm sure in that locker room right now. And yeah, I mean, even if you mentioned their tough schedule the rest of the year, which I think other than the Thunder, it's all playoff teams the rest of the way, the last like 7 games. So yeah, I mean, and they just lost to the Pelicans. I think they blew a 23-point lead against the Pelicans a couple of days ago. It's like even if they do sneak in to that like 10 spot, like they're not a lock to beat the Pelicans, and if they win that, then they're probably gonna get swept by the Suns at this point, you'd think, in the first round. So yeah, I mean, maybe they sneak in, but I don't think it's gonna really mean anything in the long run.
I mean, yeah, look, you see this team, right, and you see the remaining schedule. They got to play the Jazz on Thursday in Utah. That's not easy, even though the Jazz just blew a big lead against the Clippers the other day. That was a fluke. They got to play the Pelicans again. Obviously, without LeBron this time, they got to play the Nuggets playoff team, Suns playoff team, Warriors playoff team, Thunder, obviously not a playoff team, and then the Nuggets playoff team. Like, that's not easy for this team. And, without LeBron, it just seems like this locker room is a complete mess. And I think the Lakers just are pretty much playing their way out of the play-in. They don't want to play in the play-in. I think they want to focus on next season at this point and just move on from like Russell Westbrook and just, the whole organizational mess that's going on in LA. I think this is just it's just a rebuild season. I don't think this Laker team is functioning well. You've mentioned it. they blew that big lead against New Orleans the other day, and they just looked like a shell of themselves against the Mavericks. So the Lakers, it's just not looking pretty for them, and I don't think they can really make it out. Right now in that Grizzlies Spurs game, I mean it's close. Grizzlies are only up by one. Like it's still the game just tipped off. It's still in the first quarter, but still, it's just not. It just doesn't seem like this team really wants to make the playoffs. So, and now they lose their star, they lose their number one guy, but they have Anthony Davis coming back, but he'll be knowing his injury status. He'll probably be in the game for 2 minutes and then break his knee and then he'll be out again. Like that's just the way Anthony Davis plays. That's just how the Lakers are. So I don't think the Lakers have a good chance right here. I mean, in terms of like ending the schedule, I mean, they're still right there competing for that last play-in spot with the Spurs. Obviously, Portland's right behind them as well. Well, not right behind them, they're about 4 games behind. And then obviously New Orleans. And you look at a schedule like San Antonio's, obviously they play the Grizzlies today. And then in April, they got to play the Trailblazers twice. And then they got to play the Nuggets and T-Wolves and then Warriors and Mavericks. So they end a little hard, but 2 big wins against the Blazers back-to-back could be huge for them. So in terms of path to success, I mean, and then New Orleans, they got to play the Blazers. And then after they play the Blazers, they play the Lakers again, who are struggling. They play a good Clippers team who may get PG back. And then the Kings, Blazers, Grizzlies, and Warriors. So the Pelicans have a pretty much easier shot. So it just comes down to the Lakers and Spurs. And the way those 2 teams are playing, I want to say the Lakers do not make it. So it's just sad to see that everyone was talking about how this team could be a 4 seed, potentially a 2 or 1 seed in the East, and not in the West, and compete with teams like Phoenix and like a returning Golden State team who's now struggling. Don't get me started with that. And then Memphis now who is surging. So, and like a Utah, but now the Lakers are now in a position where they are kind of on thin ice and don't have a good shot of making it into the play-in. But we're going to keep you updated with all of this as we get closer to the beginning of the NBA playoffs, which are only a couple weeks away. Obviously, some teams have already clinched playoff spots in both conferences, I believe. The only teams really in the West that have clinched playoff spots are the Phoenix Suns and Memphis Grizzlies. The Warriors are still trying to, but they keep losing. Oh, God. And then in the East, Miami has won the division, so they're definitely in right now. But now we're going to finally transition over to some good old MLB news. And this one's kind of a homer for one. This one was kind of surprising to see, but yet kind of like a feel-good story for all MLB fans, pretty much. Albert Pujols, he's been bouncing around after his little stint in Los Angeles. He went to the Dodgers after he went to the Angels, but now he is returning to his homeland. He's coming back to St. Louis for 1 more year, and then after that, he has announced that he's going to retire as a Cardinal. This was pretty much what he wanted to do, and I love every single thing about this. This is what all players should do. They should get 1 more season with their team that they've played the longest for, that home team. And they should play 1 more season and then retire as that team. So shout out to Albert Pujols for doing that. Ari, what were your thoughts when you saw this?
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I mean, you mentioned that he mentioned that this will be his last season. Alan Wainwright and Yadier Molina haven't announced that yet, but you would think that they're getting to that point at some point. So that trio that was on the Cardinals for so long gets to play 1 more season together, which would be cool. And of course, with the universal DH being all around the MLB, AL, and NL, it makes the certain players more valuable to NL teams now that there would be a DH. Obviously, at this point in Pujols' career, I assume he'll be the full-time, DH. And I don't even know for sure if he'll be a full-time player even, but just there's a video on Twitter of him coming onto the field for the first time, and there's like music playing. It was pretty cool to see him in the Cardinals uniform again. You mentioned the feel-good story. Definitely agree with that. And we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, obviously, as we get closer to opening day, just now pretty much about a week away, it's good to see, Albert Pujols come back to his team for one last year. And you mentioned those other two in Yachty and Adam Wainwright. It's kind of like the big three of St. Louis, kind of close to that 2011 World Series team, with David Freese and all of them beating Texas. And that huge, obviously we all know that Joe Buck call with David Freese, the triple. So it's kind of good to see him, have that one comeback year, all three of them together. Obviously, you mentioned Wainwright and Yachty and, kind of that St. Louis squad. And they did just make the playoffs last year. Like, we forget, they played the Dodgers in a wild card game where the Dodgers had 100 wins. So it's not like they were playing the easy team. So, it was something hard to see, but something nice to see with Albert Pujols coming back. Obviously a lot of people were speculating he's really going to come back. He's obviously getting up there in age, and he's been playing for so long. So good to see him come back. And then I also think this is probably Yachty's last year with Adam Wainwright as well on the mound. So kind of the last ride or the last dance, as a lot of people like to say, for the big three down in St. Louis. But should be interesting to see how they play in that division as well. And now we're going to get into some college basketball news. NIT semifinals last night. First was St. Bonaventure against Xavier. That was pretty much Xavier dominating from the start. Xavier went on big runs to open the lead. They went on a 14-0 run, 12-0 run. Bonnie's tried to catch back in the end, but they ran away with it. They won 84-77, and they moved on to the title game. Ari, if you did get to watch some of this game, or got to tune into a little bit, what did you really see from this Xavier team that a lot of people were saying that they were a tournament team and just missed out with that big loss to Butler in that same stadium in Madison Square Garden, ironically. So if you got to watch that first game, what did you get to see and what'd you like?
Yeah, it was definitely a very impressive win for Xavier, I believe. They're without their head coach because they just hired Sean Miller, former U of A coach, to be the next head coach. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of their better players was injured too. And so I saw a lot of people in the betting world were on the Bonnies, and Xavier. Yeah, it was like the first 10 minutes you could tell. It wasn't, not that it was over, but they just kind of controlled the entire game, like you said. Yeah, they were I think a 4-point favorite, and you said they won by 7, right? I believe, but they were leading pretty much the entire game. And St. Bonaventure made some smaller runs to keep it, within the realm of possibility that they could come back. But I mean, kind of keeping up with the game, they never really seemed to have much of a chance. Every time they kind of went on a little run to bring it, within 5 to 7 points or whatever, Xavier would go and run their own to get it back up to double digits. So yeah, pretty much a dominating fashion, and the score. The final score won't tell you, the whole story, I feel like, about how much Xavier dominated, but definitely a very impressive performance from them onto the championship.
Yeah, very dominant game for Xavier. The Musketeers, they pretty much just opened that game up in the first half. They just tried to run away with it, but the Bonnies, they tried to make it a game, and they were, playing their hearts out. Obviously, it was win or go home for them, and they played with their hearts out, coming up with a close loss. But you mentioned it, the story doesn't really tell you how much Xavier pretty much just went on big runs and just, was just shooting the lights out against this team. So now Xavier is in the championship, and I was afraid of this one. Obviously, last night, the other semifinal was Texas A&M versus my Cougs, Washington State, and Texas A&M just controlled it from start to finish. I mean, at first the Cougars were playing close. It was pretty close without maybe halfway through the first half, or maybe with about 9 or 8 minutes left, and then all of a sudden A&M started running away with it. Playing bully ball, getting inside the paint. They were just pretty much defeating our interior defense, which is what we're known for. So, and Texas A&M did eventually get the 16-point win, 72-56 over the Cougs, and they will now advance to the championship to play Xavier. So this A&M team, a lot of people were claiming for them to be in the tournament, and then all of a sudden they did not. They were crying about it. I'm sorry, I'm a little salty toward A&M fans just because they were flooding the comment section. And this A&M team, they looked like they should have been in the NCAA tournament. just throughout this NIT tournament now in the championship. Or if you got to watch some of that game, what did you see? And just what do you see from A&M that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that they were the biggest snub, according to many people, from the NCAA tournament, and they're clearly showing, why that is the case. It just seemed like it was just a really off night for the Cougars shooting the ball. Flowers, I think, was like 2 for 12, I believe. I didn't watch the entire game, so I'm not sure if it was the Cougars missing shots or if it was the A&M defense or a little bit of both.
I can definitely get more into that. It was pretty much just a little bit of both. I mean, with Michael Flowers, I think he's just used all his shots against BYU. He obviously against BYU, he had 27 points. I think 12 of 20 from the field, but then against Texas A&M, it was a little bit of their defense, but 2 of 12 shooting. And obviously from the line, the Cougars were about like 60%, so that's not going to help either. I don't know what we finished off with, but in the first half they were about 50%, so not great at all. When you're shooting 24% from three, 34% from the field, you're not going to win the game. And then we only shot 55% from the line, so and we were getting to the line pretty easily. So it wasn't like A&M was trying not to foul us. So we knew we were kind of just battle the boards, and we just needed to hit our shots. And once we don't hit our shots, we know we're going to lose the game. So but in the end, obviously, great season for both teams, St. Bonaventure and Washington State. St. Bonaventure, they were a bubble team throughout pretty much the end of the regular season, and then they just came up short in the A-10 tournament to now clinch the NIT spot. And then the Cougars, they had a rough start. They were a tournament team like right at the beginning of the season. A lot of people had like them as the last team in. Had some bad losses in the non-conference, but then picked it up a little bit with conference wins, and then clinched an NIT bid, had a big run, and then close loss. So well respect to both teams. But that championship game is now tomorrow between Xavier and Texas A&M. And Ari, quick question: who do you like in this game? Obviously, A&M right now. Excuse me. A&M is the 4.5-point favorite to win in the Garden. Game is at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Ari, who do you like between Xavier and Texas A&M?
Yeah, I like A&M. I mentioned Xavier being without their head coach, and I believe one of their top players, if I'm not mistaken, was hurt. And St. Bonaventure wasn't able to take advantage of that, but I think A&M will. We mentioned that they were arguably the biggest snub of the NCAA tournament, and I think they're gonna win the NIT and kind of prove why most people thought that they should have made the big dance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think A&M will just dominate from the start again. I mean, that's kind of just what they do in terms of their ability to just penetrate inside the paint, and they will out rebound you. I think they pretty sure they out rebounded the Cougars yesterday by a lot. So it's pretty much just inside how A&M will just dominate, and I think that's going to translate tomorrow night, and that's why I think Xavier is going to lose. I think it's going to be close within the first half between the Musketeers and the Aggies, but I think A&M is going to run away with it throughout the second half, and then A&M will eventually get the winner victory and will be the NIT champions for the 2021-2022 season. And that's going to wrap it up. Ari, if you have any last thoughts?
No, yeah, I think that was it.
Well, we will see you guys Friday. We will obviously keep you updated with anything that goes on within the NFL world, NBA world, and obviously next week. Don't forget to tune in next week. We will be giving our predictions as we get closer to opening day, which is about a week from tomorrow. Now, Monday we'll be giving our AL predictions for division and how we evaluate the ALCS, and then NL will be on Wednesday, so don't forget to tune into that next week. We will see you guys Friday, and thanks you for tuning in for another episode, and we'll see you guys on Friday.